I'm Italian, so I'm going to do the Italian ones. She's going to do the Portuguese ones, and then wait for the end because we are going to do a bit of a linguistic challenge in a way of each other language. So yes, I tried to pick up just a few which are pretty famous desserts of Italy, from Italy, and others which are not very famous, not very known, especially abroad, and not even in Italy, as in they're like very locally, but they are like from different regions. So I didn't pick a dessert for each region because it would take too long, really. Maybe next time. But yes, so I'm going to do like I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about these cakes, desserts, or whatever they are, biscotti as well. Just telling you something interesting of these desserts. Okay, so I hope you liked that, guys, this video. Let me know what you think. So we are going to start with this pretty nice thing here. It's the tiramisu. I'm sure you know this one because it's very famous even abroad. This one is typical for the region of Veneto and Friuli Venezia Giulia. Let me show you the Italian map here. Tiramisu is typical from Veneto and Friuli Venezia Giulia. There is a debate on the place where this dessert originated. Of course, people from Veneto will say it comes from Veneto, people from Friuli Venezia Giulia will say it comes from Friuli Venezia Giulia. It seems like it originated in Treviso, so in Veneto, but I leave up to you guys to believe which version you prefer. Anyways, this one is the cake. So the main ingredients are the Savoiardi biscotti, which is a particular type of biscotti. You can use even pavesini if you want, but with the Savoiardi is better. You'll have to use quite a lot of coffee and mascarpone. And then the topping here is cocoa powder. So it's very, very, very nice. It tastes really good. It is very interesting, the name of this cake, tiramisu, which in Italian means pick me up, but it seems like it has a bit of an aphrodisiac meaning, meaning that it was in the past maybe a sort of Viagra, antiliterum in a way. Then the next one is the biscotti Bussolai or Buranelli, which are typical for the Veneto region and specifically from this little area here near Venice, the island Burano, from which they take one of the names, Buranelli. Okay, these ones. Okay, Buranelli or Bussolai. Bussolai comes from buso, which in dialect means hole, and there is a hole in the middle of this biscotti. They are very good. They taste very good. They look particularly yellow, and that's because of the egg yolk which is used in the recipe. And the tradition is that they were made specifically for the fishermen during their fishing day, because they were particularly practical, in a way particularly good, because they remained hard in the outside, but inside they remained pretty soft, which was good because, you know, they used to stay out the whole day fishing, so that was good. And they have good nutrients, so that was good as well, of course. Now, a super interesting thing is that this is another version of the Buranelli Bussolai, but these are called Esse, which is the letter S in Italian. And you think, why did they do another version? Well, because people needed to soak these biscotti into the wine, like sweet wine. And of course, with the form of the other one, it was not very handy, so they did this one because of that. The next one is typical a bit more in Liguria, but at the end of the day, you can find it really all over Italy. These ones, okay, these are called Amaretti. Now, Amaretto literally in Italian An interesting thing is that this biscuit is actually used as ingredient for other desserts. So these date back to the Middle Ages, and you can taste them really good with sweet wines, like for instance the Pasticcio di Pantelleria. So the next one is pretty famous, also outside of Italy. Maybe not as Amaretti, but I'm sure you can find it outside of Italy, and it's typical mainly from the region Tuscany. These ones, you may have seen this already. These are the so-called Cantucci or Cantuccini. They are little biscuits. Well, they can be not too little actually. You can see that there are almonds inside in the dough. They can be pretty hard, you know, so if you have like problems with your teeth, might not be a great idea to try this. But of course, if you soak them into the very famous Vinsanto, which is sweet wine, specifically, especially from Tuscany, I'm sure they will not be, they are not going to be too hard. So yes, that's a good solution. And yes, the name is pretty interesting as well, Cantuccini. Cantucci comes maybe from cantellus, which means a piece of bread in Latin. And they are actually pretty easy peasy, as though you don't have like so many ingredients to do this. And the form is also very nice, and it's actually pretty funny to do this biscuits as well, because you prepare like a big part of dough and then you cut it into pieces with this form. So then there you go. Another interesting thing is that in the original recipe there weren't almonds in these biscotti, and that they were made for the first time possibly in the 16th century, so very long tradition. The next one is typical of the region Puglia, so down here, even if the actual first version of this one came from Rome, but then it was modified, and the present version of this dessert is from Puglia. This is the one, it is called Pasticciotto. The most famous is Pasticciotto Leccese from Lecce. Anyways, it's typical of the area of Salento in Puglia, and you can clearly see here that there is a cream part inside, and then there is this part outside, which is made of short crust pastry, pasta frolla in Italian. And the name is also very interesting because pasticciotto comes from pasticcio, which can mean in Italian also a bit of a mess, and it seems like it originated actually because there was some remains of pastry, of dough and of cream, which weren't enough to do another type of cake, crostate, which I'm going to explain to you later. So they decided to do this little cake, which is actually like this. I mean, it's not really huge, with these two basic ingredients. So that's how they came up with this super tasty dessert, which is actually really easy as ingredients as well. The next one is typical of Lazio, of Rome specifically, and it seems that it originated from ancient Rome, so the tradition is super long. This one, this is not very famous outside of Italy, and I myself didn't know it till a couple of years ago. It is called Maritozzo. The name is also not so easy. It is this one as well, very easy peasy as ingredients. It's basically a bit of a sweet sort of piece of bread in a way. It's not bread, of course, but the dough, this is just to say that the dough is really easy peasy, not too sweet as well, because then you have this central very sweet part, because this is whipped cream, so very sweet. The name tell us how maybe this this dessert was invented. so many years ago. Maritozzo comes maybe from marito, which is husband in Italian, and it is said that the men used to give this type of cake to their fiancés, and then the fiancés would have called their men Maritozzo, which is like a funny way to call their husband in a way. And another interesting thing is that inside this Maritozzo, inside the cream, there could have been some gifts for the fiancé, like a ring, of course, as well. Why not? So yeah, very nice, and of course it's so tasty. The next one is biscotto, which is typical specifically from the region Liguria up here and the town of Casale Monferrato. This one, okay. The name is Krumiri, but with a K, which is very unusual because in Italian we never use the K, you know, in our words, but it comes from an Italian word, Krumiri, where the people who didn't want to participate to the strikes, and this takes us back to when these biscotti were invented, so to speak. They were done firstly in the year around the year 1878, around that year, and the syndicalism in that period was very important. So that's why they decided to give this biscotti this name, but also it is said that maybe the form, it reminds of the moustaches of the King Vittorio Emanuele II. The second was King of Italy, and yes, so there is a bit of a historic side of this biscotti. They are very easy, as you understood. Many of the Italian desserts are very easy to prepare, easy ingredients, and yes, of course, these are particularly good if you soak them in wine, sweet wine, but even in coffee, chocolate, because you have all these little semi-holes here, which, thanks to which the taste of whatever you want to eat the biscuits with will go together with the biscuit in a way. The next one I picked is actually typical not only in Italy, I would say a bit of a Alpine area, so in Austria as well, in Germany as well, but also in Trentino Alto Adige region, a bit in Veneto, Friuli Venezia Giulia, but I would say more in Trentino and Alto Adige, so up here. And it has very, very long history. It seems like the very first versions of this dessert were with the Assyrian in the 8th century BC, so not only far away in the time, but far away in the space. So from here, very far away. It is this one. Okay, it is called Strudel auf Deutsch in German, because the name is actually German, not even Italian. You may see a bit of the ingredients here. Apples is one of the main ingredients and typical ingredients for this dessert. Then here there are some raisins and pine nuts as well. This version here is made with puff pastry, but you can use also short crust pastry if you want. So these are the two main versions, I would say. The name Strudel explains to us how this cake is, because Strudel means vortex in German. Vortex maybe because of the form of this cake, of this dessert, because it has the form of a roll. You have to put all the ingredients together and then roll everything together. Of course, if you buy already prepared puff pastry, for instance, it's super easy because you put all the ingredients together, you cover everything, you roll everything, you put it in the oven, and you're done. And then on the top, of course, you put some powdered sugar. And yes, the best way to serve it is with a bit of cream on the side. Very good. You may ask yourself, how come a cake dessert which was from the Far East, in a way, Middle East more, has come to this country, to Italy, because, you know, it was very far away. Well, I would say that it did it had a long way, this cake, later, but still before Christ, a version of this cake in Greece. And then there were different others in Turkey, for instance, as well, where they still have some cakes or desserts that are not so different from strudel, actually, in Greece as well. But yes, some parts are different, some specifics, some ingredients maybe are also different. Anyways, from Turkey they reached the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the 17th century, and that's also why later on you could find, and you can find actually even today, the strudel also in Hungary, in Austria of course, and in Trentino Alto Adige as well. Well, Alto Adige, well, the whole Trentino Alto Adige was part of Austria historically. The next dessert is actually typical a bit all over Italy, I would say. It dates back to the 17th century, so it's pretty old as well. It's this one right here, the so-called crostata. The name crostata comes from crostare, encrusted, and it's really typical for breakfast, also of course at the end of a nice dinner. To prepare the crostata you usually use a short crust pastry and as you can see here, jam. There is also a summer version of it where you can put a type of custard, crema pasticcera, and then fresh fruit all over it. It's really nice to see as well. And in this like more winter version, in a way, you put the short crust pastry on the base and you put the jam, and then you do this all these nice things, drawings in a way, with the remaining pastry that you have. So it's also very nice to see. The next and last one is typical of the region Campania. This one as well is the result of the use of some leftovers, which I find it pretty amazing because, you know, it's in a way recycling until later on, because, you know, instead of throwing food away, people really managed to use leftovers just to eat something different, maybe that could taste different. This is it. It is the sfogliatella. Okay, sfogliatella, like it is pronounced in Campania, in a dialectal pronunciation. Sfogliatella means small sfogliata, because the very first version was bigger than this, so it is smaller, so sfogliatella of course makes sense. This is the so-called sfogliatella riccia, because it is made with puff pastry, whereas the version made with short crust pastry is called frolla. Okay, on top you can see there is some powdered sugar. And yes, it seems like it was firstly made in a convent in province of Salerno, so in Campania, because there were some leftovers of cream, of puff pastry. They decided to add some other ingredients like limoncello, which of course is typical of the area, sugar and nuts, and then they covered everything with some pastry. So there you go. So inside there is like cream. In the modern version there is usually a type of cream. Then of course you can have different versions. So guys, I hope you like this video. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know if you found something interesting in this video. Let me know if you would like to know more about other typical dishes of Italy or similar things, if you like this type of content. And yes, to finish up this collaboration, I am now going to read the cakes that Joy is going to show to you. So sorry for my bad Portuguese pronunciation, because I don't know a word of Portuguese apart from obrigada. So here we go. Pastel de nata, pastel de tentugal, tripa, ovos moles, leite creme, pudim abate de briscos, baba de camelo, cavacas de resende, aletria, pau de lo de ovara. I think I tried pastel de nata once, possibly. Anyways, I'm sure they are going to be super delicious, and that Joe will tell you some very nice, interesting things about all these desserts. Thank you so much for watching,